Buried within the forgotten archives of the Wisconsin Diocese lies a collection of documents the Catholic Church has tried to suppress for more than 160 years. These papers detail the systematic vanishing of 23 nuns from St. Mary's Convent near Lake Michigan between 1854 and 1862. Church officials have dismissed these records as mere administrative errors and misinterpretations. Yet the testimony of 3 separate diocesan inspectors, along with a cache of private correspondence recently discovered sealed within a wall cavity during renovations, tells a story so horrific that even hardened historians have questioned whether such evil could truly exist within hallowed walls. What follows is the first comprehensive account of what many consider the most disturbing case of religious corruption in American history, a case the Catholic Church has spent a fortune ensuring you would never hear. Before we continue with the story of St. Mary's Convent, I must ask, if you're finding this tale unsettling already, please subscribe to our channel for more historically accurate accounts of America's darkest religious secrets. Our community of mystery seekers spans all 50 states. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment below. Now, let's return to the Wisconsin countryside of 1854, where our story begins. Heavy morning fog hung over Lake Michigan as Bishop William Quarter's carriage rolled through the gates of what would become St. Mary's Convent. The Catholic Church had purchased the sprawling estate, a former lumber baron's mansion surrounded by 30 acres of dense woodland, with the intention of establishing the first major Catholic institution in the largely Protestant Wisconsin territory. This strategic expansion was part of a broader push to establish Catholic influence in America's rapidly developing frontier regions, where Protestant denominations were already gaining significant footholds. The limestone mansion, with its 3 imposing wings and bell tower, stood in stark contrast to the humble wooden churches dotting the Wisconsin landscape. Constructed in 1842, the central building featured Gothic arches and narrow windows that seemed to watch like eyes over the surrounding countryside. 2 wings extended from either side, the east wing intended for the nuns' quarters, the west for the proposed orphanage and infirmary. Behind the main structure stood a small chapel, its spire rising above the treetops, visible for miles across the flat Wisconsin plains. Local Protestant families viewed the arriving nuns with suspicion. Their black habits and Irish accents marked them as outsiders in a community dominated by German and Scandinavian settlers. The region's residents, primarily Lutheran and Methodist, had grown accustomed to the simple democratic structure of their own religious communities. The hierarchical nature of Catholicism, with its rituals and secrets, felt foreign and threatening. On the day of the convent's consecration, a small crowd gathered outside the gates. "Papists," muttered Elijah Hoffman, a respected elder at the local Lutheran church, as he watched the black-robed figures process into the chapel. "They'll bring their foreign ways here, corrupt our children with their idolatry." His companion, Wilhelm Schmidt, nodded grimly. "My grandfather fled Germany to escape the Catholics' persecution. Now they follow us even here." This sentiment, though not universal, reflected the deep religious tensions that would form the backdrop for the tragedy to come. "St. Mary's will serve as a beacon of God's mercy in this wilderness," Bishop Quarter announced to the small gathering of clergy and local dignitaries at the consecration ceremony. His voice echoed through the newly completed chapel, where morning light filtered through simple stained glass windows, casting pools of colored light across the wooden pews. "Under the guidance of Mother Superior Catherine Murphy, this convent will offer shelter to orphans, comfort to widows, and healing to the sick." The bishop's Boston accent echoed off the stone walls as he introduced the 3 women who would lead the convent: Mother Superior Catherine, Sister Elizabeth Foster, and Sister Margaret Clark, all from established convents in the East. Mother Superior Catherine stood tall and imposing in her crisp black habit, her sharp features and penetrating gaze commanding instant respect. At 42, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman accustomed to authority. Her hands, when raised in prayer, were elegant but strong, hands that looked equally capable of comforting a child or disciplining a wayward novice. Those who met her often commented on her eyes, an unusual pale blue that seemed to see through pretense. "Mother Catherine comes to us with the highest recommendations," the bishop continued. "Her work at St. Augustine's in Boston has prepared her well for the challenges of frontier religious life." Sister Elizabeth, 38, with her perpetual smile and soft voice, would oversee the orphanage. Plump and maternal with rosy cheeks and gentle hands, she seemed perfectly suited to care for abandoned children. When she spoke, it was always with a slight hesitation, as if carefully considering each word, a trait many initially interpreted as thoughtfulness rather than calculation. Sister Margaret, 35, with her extensive knowledge of herbal remedies, would establish the infirmary. Tall and thin, with a serious demeanor and nimble fingers, she carried herself with the precision of someone who measured medicines by the drop. Her dark eyes missed nothing, and her knowledge of both traditional and modern medical practices had impressed physicians in Boston and New York. 20 younger nuns, most in their 20s and newly arrived from Ireland, completed the founding community. They stood in a perfect line, habits crisp, heads bowed in appropriate humility, as Bishop Quarter blessed each by name: Sister Agnes O'Connor, Sister Bernarde Walsh, Sister Teresa Donovan, Sister Mary Collins, young women who had left behind family and homeland to serve God in a strange new country. Their faces, though solemn during the ceremony, occasionally betrayed their youth and uncertainty when they thought no one was watching. "The Lord has called us to this wilderness," Mother Catherine addressed her sisters that first evening. Candlelight cast long shadows across the refectory, the smell of fresh bread and weak tea hung in the air, and the chill of the Wisconsin autumn seeped through the stone walls despite the large fireplace at the room's end. "We will face hardships unknown to our Eastern counterparts. We will encounter suspicion from those who fear our faith. But we shall overcome through devotion and sacrifice." The young nuns, far from home and family, clung to her words like a lifeline in this strange new world. Sister Agnes whispered to Sister Bernarde as they prepared for bed that night, their narrow cots separated by barely an arm's length in the dormitory-style sleeping quarters. "Do you think the locals will ever accept us?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the brave face she had maintained all day. Sister Bernarde squeezed her hand in the darkness. "They feared our Lord, too, at first. We must show them through our works that we mean only good." The whispered conversation ended abruptly at the sound of footsteps in the corridor, Mother Catherine making her rounds, ensuring all was in order on their first night. The convent quickly established itself as a functioning religious community. The daily rhythm of prayers began with matins at 3 a.m., the bells tolling, cutting through the pre-dawn darkness, summoning sleepy nuns from warm beds to cold chapel floors. The distinctive drone of Latin chants filled the chapel 7 times daily, from those early morning prayers through to compline at 9 p.m. The sound became as much a part of the local landscape as the wind through the pines or the distant lowing of cattle. Between prayers, the nuns operated a small orphanage for abandoned children, tended the sick in a modest infirmary, and maintained extensive vegetable gardens. Their days followed a strict schedule: prayer, work, simple meals, brief recreation, more prayer, a rhythm designed to focus the mind on God and service rather than individual comfort or desire. By the winter of 1854, the orphanage housed 12 children, mostly the offspring of Irish immigrant laborers who had died in railway or lumber accidents. Sister Elizabeth oversaw their care with apparent tenderness, teaching basic letters and numbers alongside Catholic doctrine. On Sundays, local families would sometimes visit after Mass, bringing small treats for the children and occasionally inquiring about adoption. Sister Margaret's infirmary began modestly but quickly gained respect among local families. Her knowledge of traditional remedies, poultices for inflammation, herbal teas for fevers, special compresses for chest ailments, proved effective, especially during the harsh Wisconsin winter when doctor visits required dangerous travel through snow-choked roads. Their self-sufficiency impressed even the most skeptical neighbors, and gradually the local attitude shifted from suspicion to grudging respect. "They keep to themselves, but they do good work," admitted Elijah Hoffman grudgingly to his congregation after Sister Margaret had successfully treated his grandson's persistent cough. "Their ways are not our ways, but perhaps there is room for different paths to heaven in this big country." Sister Agnes O'Connor, at 23, was among the youngest nuns at St. Mary's. Her letters home to Ireland, preserved in the Dublin Diocesan Archive, provide a rare glimpse into the early days of the convent. Her careful penmanship filled pages with observations about her new life, though close readers might note the gradually changing tone as months passed. "The work is harder than I ever imagined," she wrote in December 1854, the paper bearing smudges suggesting tears had fallen as she wrote. "My hands are raw from washing linens in ice-cold water, and the chapel stones feel like ice beneath our knees during morning prayers. But Mother Catherine assures us that our sacrifices please God. Sister Elizabeth has been particularly kind, helping me adjust to this strange country. She brings me extra blankets on the coldest nights and has shown such patience in teaching me the proper care of the orphans. Sister Margaret's remedies saved us during a fever that swept through the orphanage last month. The children burned with such heat we feared we would lose them all. But her tincture of willow bark and honey brought down their temperatures. I believe we are doing God's work, though I confess I still cry myself to sleep some nights missing the green hills of home." What these letters do not reveal, what Sister Agnes herself might not have fully comprehended, were the subtle changes already taking place within St. Mary's walls. Mother Catherine's leadership style, initially merely strict, had begun to shift toward the autocratic. Minor infractions of convent rules, previously addressed with gentle correction, now resulted in increasingly severe penances. Sister Josephine Brady's hands shook as she attempted to darn a tear in her habit one evening in January 1855. Having accidentally broken silence during afternoon prayers with a sudden cough, she had been assigned to kneel on dried peas while reciting the entire rosary, a penance that left her knees bleeding and swollen. Sister Mary Collins helped her thread the needle, their eyes meeting in a moment of silent sympathy. "Do not draw attention to her weakness." Mother Catherine's voice cut through the quiet workroom, causing both women to startle. She had entered silently, a skill that increasingly unsettled the younger nuns. "Sister Josephine must learn that discipline is the cornerstone of devotion. Each of you would do well to remember that." By the spring of 1855, St. Mary's had gained a reputation for exceptional charity. When a measles epidemic swept through the nearby lumber camps, Sister Margaret's infirmary treated dozens of workers regardless of their faith. The convent began receiving modest donations from grateful families, and even Protestant ministers acknowledged the good work being done behind those limestone walls. What no one outside the convent realized was that life inside St. Mary's was changing in subtle, disturbing ways. The communal meals had become increasingly silent affairs, with nuns keeping their eyes fixed on their bowls of thin soup or plates of plain bread. The recreation hour, once filled with quiet conversation and occasional laughter, grew tense and muted. Young women who had crossed an ocean together, bonded by shared purpose and faith, now moved like shadows, careful not to draw attention. The first strange occurrence came in April 1855 when Sister Agnes failed to appear for morning prayers. Her absence was immediately noticed, one empty place in the chapel where 20 nuns should stand in perfect formation. The other sisters exchanged quick, concerned glances as Mother Catherine entered, her expression unreadable in the dim candlelight. "Sister Agnes has been called to assist at our mission in Minnesota," Mother Catherine announced to the bewildered community at breakfast, her tone brooking no questions. Her departure was sudden, as such callings often are. "We shall all pray for her success in this new endeavor." Sister Bernardet's spoon clattered against her bowl. "But Mother, she said nothing to me, and she fell silent as Mother Catherine's pale eyes fixed on her face. "Are you suggesting, Sister Bernardet, that a bride of Christ requires permission from her fellows rather than her superiors before answering God's call?" The question hung in the air like frost. "No, Mother. Forgive me." Sister Bernardet lowered her eyes to her cooling porridge. No one had seen Sister Agnes pack or leave, and she had mentioned nothing of a transfer in her letters home. But in the strict hierarchy of convent life, no one dared question Mother Superior's explanation further. That evening in the dormitory, several nuns noticed Sister Agnes's few possessions, her prayer book, the small wooden rosary her mother had given her, the extra woolen stockings for Wisconsin winters, were gone, as if she had indeed packed and departed. But Sister Mary Collins, whose cot had been beside Agnes's, whispered to Sister Teresa Donovan during their brief moments alone in the garden, her cloak still hung on its peg. Would she have left without it in April? In Minnesota? Sister Teresa glanced nervously toward the convent windows. Perhaps she was given a new one for the journey. "We should not speculate, Sister." 3 months later, Sister Bernardet Walsh vanished in similar fashion. "The bishop has requested Sister Bernardet's assistance with a delicate matter in Chicago," Mother Catherine explained. She left before dawn to catch the early train. Again, no farewell, no warning, just an empty cell and a hastily provided explanation. This time, Sister Elizabeth elaborated during the nuns' work period. Sister Bernardet showed such skill with the orphans that the bishop has requested she help establish proper procedures at the new foundling home in Chicago. Her voice carried the appropriate mix of pride and pious acceptance, but Sister Mary noticed that her usually warm eyes remained cold as she spoke. By the winter of 1855, 3 more nuns had transferred to distant missions. Each departure followed the same pattern. A young nun, usually one who had drawn attention for her beauty or gentle nature, would simply fail to appear one morning. Mother Catherine would announce her reassignment, always to a location too distant for easy verification. Letters sent by worried families to these supposed new assignments would return months later with brief, oddly formal responses that provided few details of their new lives. The responses, when examined years later by handwriting experts, would all be identified as written by the same person, not the missing nuns themselves. Sister Teresa Donovan was one of the few who dared voice concerns. Tall and strong from years of farm work before taking her vows, with a directness unusual in convent life, she had already drawn Mother Catherine's disapproval for questioning the increasing severity of penances assigned to younger nuns. It seemed strange that Rome would request so many transfers without proper documentation, she whispered to Sister Mary Collins as they worked in the garden in the summer of 1856, their fingers stained with soil as they harvested early carrots. The garden had expanded that year, with a new section dedicated to medicinal herbs that Sister Margaret tended personally behind a high fence that none but she and Mother Catherine could enter. And have you noticed it's always the youngest and prettiest who are called away? Sister Teresa continued, her Irish brogue thickening as it always did when she was upset. First Agnes with her golden hair, then Bernardet with that lovely singing voice, then Catherine with her perfect complexion, and Josephine with her, she trailed off as a shadow fell across the garden bed. Sister Mary hushed her immediately, glancing nervously toward the convent windows, where Sister Margaret stood watching, her thin face expressionless. Mother Catherine has her reasons. We must trust in her wisdom. The following week, Sister Teresa was gone. Called to a contemplative retreat in Montreal, was the official explanation provided at morning prayers. Sister Mary, now thoroughly frightened, kept her head down and her thoughts to herself. That evening, as she made her bed, she found a small piece of paper tucked beneath her pillow, a page torn from Sister Teresa's prayer book with a hastily scrawled message in the margin, * something is wrong. If I disappear, tell Father Ryan, * the sight of her friend's handwriting, the ink still relatively fresh, sent a chill through Sister Mary that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeping through the stone walls. By 1857, the pattern had become impossible to ignore within the convent walls. Of the original 20 junior nuns, only 12 remained. The official explanations continued: special missions, retreats, transfers to nursing positions during disease outbreaks. To the outside world, St. Mary's continued to function normally. Local families still brought sick relatives to Sister Margaret's infirmary. Orphans still received care in Sister Elizabeth's orphanage. Sunday visitors saw nothing amiss in the solemn processions of black-clad figures moving from chapel to garden to refectory. But inside those limestone walls, fear had become a tangible presence. The remaining nuns spoke in whispers, avoided being alone, and watched in terror as their numbers dwindled. Mother Catherine's leadership grew more authoritarian. Minor infractions of convent rules resulted in severe penances, days of fasting, nights spent in prayer on cold stone floors, public confessions of increasingly intimate sins. Sister Claire O'Donnell, discovered with a small piece of chocolate sent by her family, was forced to kneel before the entire community and confess to gluttony and deception, unworthy of a bride of Christ. Mother Catherine assigned her to fast for 3 days, taking only water and a single piece of bread at the evening meal. When Sister Claire fainted during chapel prayers on the second day, it was Sister Margaret who revived her with smelling salts, her thin lips curved in what some later described as a smile. One unusually cold night in January 1858, Sister Mary Collins awoke to muffled sounds from the cell next to hers. Through the thin wall, she could hear Sister Rebecca Murphy sobbing, then a sharp whisper she recognized as Mother Catherine's voice: "You will come with us now. Make any noise and you'll regret it." The sound of shuffling feet followed, then silence. Sister Mary lay frozen in her narrow bed, heart pounding so loudly she feared it would betray her wakefulness. The floorboards in the corridor creaked, 1, 2, 3 sets of footsteps moving away from Sister Rebecca's cell. Then a sound that would haunt Sister Mary's dreams for years to come, a muffled cry quickly silenced, followed by what sounded like a body being dragged rather than walking of its own accord. The next morning, Mother Catherine announced that Sister Rebecca had been called to serve at a frontier mission in the Dakota Territory. The native children there require instruction, and Sister Rebecca's patience with the orphans has prepared her well for this holy task. Mother Catherine's pale eyes swept the refectory, lingering momentarily on Sister Mary. We shall miss her gentle presence but rejoice in God's purpose for her talents. Sister Mary, shaking with fear, managed to maintain her composure through morning prayers, her rosary beads clicking between trembling fingers as she mouthed the familiar prayers, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. What had happened to Sister Rebecca? What had happened to all the others? That afternoon, while sweeping the corridor outside Mother Catherine's office, she overheard a disturbing conversation. The heavy oak door was not quite closed, and voices carried clearly to where Sister Mary stood, dust brush suddenly motionless in her hand. The doctor says this one will fetch a higher price. Sister Elizabeth's usually gentle voice had taken on a cold, calculating tone that Sister Mary would not have recognized had she not been listening at that very door. He says men pay extra for the innocent ones. We need to be more careful with the timing, Sister Margaret replied, the sound of glass clinking suggesting she was organizing her medicines as she spoke. 3 in 1 month raises questions. The bishop's secretary mentioned it in his last letter. The bishop is easily managed. Mother Catherine's dismissive laugh sent chills down Sister Mary's spine. Another donation to his cathedral fund, and his questions will disappear. Besides, we've established the pattern well enough. No one questions nuns being sent to frontier missions or succumbing to illness during their charitable work. What about the Collins girl? Sister Margaret asked, her voice dropping lower. She watches too closely. I've seen her listening at doors. A moment of silence followed, during which Sister Mary's heart nearly stopped. "We'll wait," Mother Catherine finally replied. "She's too plain to fetch much, and she has that correspondence with her brother in the seminary. Disappearing too many at once attracts attention. Rebecca will keep the doctor's clients satisfied for now." Sister Mary fled before she could be discovered, her mind racing. What had happened to her missing sisters? What terrible fate had befallen Sister Rebecca just last night? And who was this doctor? The pieces began to fall into terrible place in her mind. The missing nuns, always the youngest and most attractive, the strange visits from well-dressed benefactors who toured the convent with Mother Catherine, the unexplained sounds sometimes heard from the locked north wing at night, the growing wealth of the convent despite its supposedly humble means. After a sleepless night of prayer and deliberation, Sister Mary made a desperate decision. During her weekly duty collecting eggs from the chicken coop, the only time she was permitted beyond the convent walls without supervision, she slipped a hastily written note into the pocket of Jimmy Fletcher, the 12-year-old son of a local farmer who delivered milk to the convent each morning. Jimmy's eyes widened as Sister Mary's hand brushed his pocket. She had never spoken to him directly before. The rules forbade casual conversation with outsiders, especially males of any age. "Please deliver this to Father Thomas at St. Joseph's Church in town," she whispered, pressing a small silver cross into the boy's hand. The cross had been her confirmation gift, the only item of value she possessed. "Tell no one else. Lives depend on it." The boy nodded solemnly, his freckled face serious beyond his years. "Yes, sister. I promise." The note, which has been preserved in diocesan records, read simply, "Something evil happens at St. Mary's. Nuns disappearing, not sent away as claimed. I fear for my life. Please send help. Sister Mary Collins *. Father Thomas Ryan, the young Irish priest who received the note, had always harbored reservations about Mother Catherine. During his monthly visits to offer Mass at the convent, he had noticed the dwindling number of nuns and found Mother Catherine's explanations vague and inconsistent. But as a mere parish priest, he had limited authority to question a Mother Superior. Father Ryan paced his small study, the worn floorboards creaking beneath his feet as he read and reread Sister Mary's desperate message. The silver cross lay heavy in his palm. He recognized it as the type given to young women at confirmation, not something a nun would part with lightly. The urgency of the message, combined with his own growing concerns, demanded action. But what action could he take against a Mother Superior, especially one as well-connected as Catherine Murphy? Rather than confronting Mother Catherine directly, Father Ryan traveled to Milwaukee to speak with his superior, Bishop John Henney. The journey took a full day by horseback, the late winter roads alternating between ice and mud. He arrived at the bishop's residence with his cassock spattered and his resolve firm. Bishop Henney received him in a comfortably appointed study, far warmer and more luxurious than Father Ryan's humble parish house. Construction of Milwaukee's new St. John's Cathedral dominated the conversation initially, the bishop proudly showing architectural drawings and discussing funding with animation. "It will be the finest cathedral west of New York," Bishop Henney declared, his German accent still pronounced despite decades in America. "A proper monument to our faith in this Protestant wilderness." Father Ryan nodded appropriately, waiting for an opening to introduce his concerns. When the bishop finally asked about his parish, the young priest carefully laid out his observations, the dwindling number of nuns at St. Mary's, the inconsistent explanations, and finally the desperate note from Sister Mary. The bishop's expression changed as Father Ryan spoke, his initial warmth giving way to a careful neutrality. "These are serious accusations, Father," he said, setting aside the silver cross without examining it closely. "Mother Catherine has explained each transfer to my satisfaction." "But Your Excellency, 8 nuns have disappeared in less than 3 years, Father Ryan pressed. No documentation has been provided for these transfers. No one has received consistent correspondence from these women after they supposedly left. The frontier missions require educated women," the bishop replied with finality, rising from his chair to indicate the meeting was concluding. "I'll not have you spreading rumors that could damage the Church's reputation in this Protestant region. Mother Catherine has been most generous in supporting our cathedral building fund. Her spiritual leadership is beyond reproach." As the bishop ushered him out, he added with a note of warning, "Focus on your parish duties, Father Ryan. Leave the administration of convents to those appointed by God for that purpose." Father Ryan left the bishop's office discouraged but not deterred. If the proper channels would not address his concerns, he would need to find another way to investigate the mysterious disappearances at St. Mary's. The opportunity came in March 1858 when Bishop Henny assigned Father Ryan to collect the annual financial reports from parishes and religious institutions throughout the diocese. This official capacity gave him legitimate reason to examine St. Mary's records and perhaps find evidence of what had happened to the missing nuns. The March winds cut through Father Ryan's heavy coat as his horse-drawn buggy approached St. Mary's. The convent looked different somehow, the gardens more neglected, the windows darker, despite the mild spring weather that should have brought the nuns outdoors for their work. The bell tower that had once rung clearly for each divine office now sounded less frequently, its tone somehow muted. He was met at the door by Sister Elizabeth, whose customary smile seemed strained. Dark circles beneath her eyes suggested sleepless nights, and her typically neat habit showed small signs of neglect, a missing pin, a slight stain on the white collar. "Father Ryan, we weren't expecting you today," she said, her surprise poorly concealed. "Mother Catherine is indisposed today," she continued, leading him to a small, cold parlor rather than the comfortable study where he usually met with the Mother Superior. "She asks that you leave the diocesan forms, and she will complete them by week's end." "I'm afraid the bishop was quite clear," Father Ryan insisted, removing his coat and setting his briefcase on the table. He tried to project an authority he didn't entirely feel, aware that his youth and relatively low position in the church hierarchy worked against him. "I am to review the records personally this year. Financial irregularities have been discovered in several institutions." Sister Elizabeth's smile vanished entirely. "That won't be possible today. Our bookkeeper, Sister Margaret, is attending to a dying child in the infirmary." "Then I shall wait." Father Ryan settled more firmly in his chair. "Or perhaps I could tour the convent while waiting. It has been some time since I've seen the improvements to the orphanage I've heard so much about." The look that flashed across Sister Elizabeth's face, was it fear? Anger, vanished quickly. "As you wish, Father, though I must ask you to avoid the north wing. We have several cases of influenza there and would not want you exposed." The north wing, where Father Ryan had never been permitted to enter, ostensibly because it contained the nuns' private quarters. His suspicion deepened. The tour revealed a convent functioning far below its reported capacity. Where were the 20 orphans mentioned in Mother Catherine's reports to the diocese? Father Ryan counted only 7 children, all looking thin and frightened. When he attempted to speak with a small girl sweeping the dormitory floor, Sister Elizabeth quickly intervened, sending the child away on an errand. The infirmary, supposedly caring for dozens of local residents, contained only 3 elderly patients, none showing signs of the reported influenza. Sister Margaret was nowhere to be seen despite her supposed attendance on a dying child. Most disturbing was the clear reduction in nuns. Father Ryan had offered Mass at St. Mary's just 3 months earlier and recalled at least 15 nuns in attendance. Today he counted only 8, including Sister Elizabeth. When he inquired about specific nuns he remembered, Sister Rebecca, Sister Josephine, Sister Clare, he received the same vague responses about transfers and special missions. "And Sister Mary Collins?" he asked casually as they passed the laundry room, where 2 nuns worked silently at large wash tubs, steam rising around their reddened hands. Sister Elizabeth's step faltered slightly. "Sister Mary has been assigned to our mission in St. Louis. She left just last week. Her experience with the orphans made her particularly suited to the work there." Father Ryan nodded, hiding his alarm. The author of the desperate note was now among the disappeared. His suspicions now fully aroused, he requested to see the convent's chapel before departing. The chapel, once immaculate, showed subtle signs of neglect, dust on the altar rails, unpolished candlesticks, wilting flowers that should have been replaced. The sacred space that had once housed 23 nuns in prayer now felt hollow, as if the very stone sensed the wrongness that had infiltrated St. Mary's. While Sister Elizabeth was momentarily distracted by a message from a novice, Father Ryan slipped through a side door he knew led to the residential wing. The corridor was eerily silent for mid-afternoon. Many of the cells stood empty, personal items gone, as if their occupants had indeed departed. As he turned to leave, a barely audible sound caught his attention, something between a whimper and a moan coming from behind a heavy wooden door at the end of the corridor. The door, unlike the others, had a substantial iron lock. Father Ryan approached cautiously, listening intently. The sound came again, definitely human, definitely distressed. "Is someone there?" he whispered through the keyhole. "Do you need help?" A moment of silence, then a hoarse female voice, "Father. Father, is that you? Please help us. Please." Before he could respond, the unmistakable voice of Mother Catherine rang out behind him, "Father Ryan, this area is strictly cloistered. Your presence here is most inappropriate." He turned to find Mother Catherine, flanked by Sister Margaret and a large man he didn't recognize, not dressed as clergy or medical personnel, but in the rough clothing of a laborer, with arms thick as tree trunks and a face set in a threatening scowl. "Forgive me, Mother," Father Ryan managed, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I became turned around after visiting the chapel." Mother Catherine's pale eyes assessed him coldly. She had lost weight since he'd last seen her, her habit hanging loosely on her frame, but her authority seemed only to have intensified. This wing houses sisters under special spiritual direction. Their seclusion is essential to their devotional practice. "I heard someone calling for help," Father Ryan countered, gathering his courage. "You heard, Sister," and in the midst of her spiritual exercises, Sister Margaret interjected smoothly. "Some of our more dedicated sisters practice mortification of the flesh. Their cries can be misinterpreted by those unfamiliar with advanced devotional practices. Mr. Callahan will show you out," Mother Catherine nodded to the burly man. "We will send the financial reports to Milwaukee by week's end." The man named Callahan stepped forward, his posture suggesting he was accustomed to enforcing Mother Catherine's will through means not entirely spiritual. "This way, Father," he said, his voice carrying a hint of menace beneath the forced politeness. The man gripped his arm with unnecessary force. Father Ryan caught one last glimpse of the locked door. Who had spoken to him. What did she mean by us? How many women were being held behind that door? The moment his buggy cleared the convent gates, Father Ryan whipped his horse into a gallop, his mind racing faster than the animal's hooves. The voice, the locked door, the missing nuns, the frightened children, the intimidating presence of the men called Callahan, all pointed to something sinister occurring at St. Mary's. This was beyond his authority as a parish priest. He needed official intervention. Bypassing Bishop Henny, whom he now suspected of either complicity or willful ignorance, Father Ryan sent an urgent telegram to Archbishop John Hughes in New York, grave concerns regarding St. Mary's Convent, Wisconsin. Suspicious disappearances of multiple nuns, evidence of imprisonment, possible danger to remaining sisters. Request immediate diocesan investigation. Local bishop unresponsive. Father Thomas Ryan, St. Joseph's Parish *. If you're feeling a chill down your spine as our story unfolds, you're not alone. Our community of mystery seekers often reports physical reactions to these dark historical accounts. Take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who appreciates true historical mysteries. Your engagement helps us continue uncovering America's hidden secrets. Now, as we return to 1858, a storm is brewing over St. Mary's Convent that will reveal horrors beyond imagination. Archbishop Hughes, known for his no-nonsense approach to diocesan management, responded swiftly. Rather than alerting Bishop Henny, he dispatched his personal secretary, Monsignor Patrick Kelly, to conduct a surprise inspection of St. Mary's. Monsignor Kelly arrived unannounced at the convent gates on April 17, 1858, accompanied by Father Ryan and two senior priests from neighboring parishes. The spring day dawned clear and mild, the kind of day that typically filled Wisconsin farmers with hope for the coming planting season. But as the clerical party approached St. Mary's, a sense of foreboding seemed to hang over the limestone buildings. Ravens circled the bell tower, their harsh cries breaking the morning stillness. The reception they received spoke volumes. Mother Catherine, usually composed and commanding, appeared flustered by their arrival, her pale face flushed with what might have been anger or fear as she recognized Monsignor Kelly's official robes and the sealed documents he carried. The convent itself seemed in disarray, with nuns scurrying about in what appeared to be panicked activity. Through an open window, Father Ryan glimpsed two young nuns hastily carrying armfuls of papers toward the kitchen, where the large cast-iron stove burned regardless of the season's warmth. The acrid smell of burning paper drifted through the courtyard. "This is most irregular, Monsignor," Mother Catherine protested as the clerical party entered the main hall. Her voice, usually controlled and melodious, had taken on a brittle edge. "We have protocols for official visitations. Bishop Henny always sends word weeks in advance. Which is precisely why Archbishop Hughes instructed me to forego such notification," Monsignor Kelly replied coolly. In his 50s, with silver hair and the weathered face of a man who had seen both war and peace, the Monsignor projected an authority that even Mother Catherine seemed unable to challenge directly. "I have here a letter bearing the Archbishop's seal, authorizing a complete inspection of this institution, its records, and all its residents. I trust you will cooperate fully." Mother Catherine's eyes darted briefly to Sister Margaret, who stood half-hidden in a doorway, her thin face unreadable. Some silent communication seemed to pass between them before Mother Catherine turned back to Monsignor Kelly with a forced smile. "Of course, Monsignor. St. Mary's has nothing to hide. However, I must insist that you respect the enclosure of our cloistered sisters. Some are engaged in spiritual exercises that must not be interrupted. My authority extends to all areas of this convent, Mother Catherine, Monsignor Kelly replied, unfolding the Archbishop's letter and holding it before her. No exceptions. What followed was a day-long investigation that would later be described in Monsignor Kelly's 40-page report as unveiling a tableau of horrors unprecedented in the modern church. The inspection team split up, with Father Ryan leading Monsignor Kelly directly to the locked door in the residential wing while the other priests began interviewing the visible nuns and examining financial records. As they approached the north wing, they encountered Sister Elizabeth blocking the corridor, her usually pleasant face set in uncharacteristic determination. Mother Catherine has forbidden entrance to this area, Monsignor. We have sisters in spiritual retreat. Sister Elizabeth, Monsignor Kelly said gently but firmly, I speak with the authority of Archbishop Hughes. Open the door, or I shall be forced to consider you in violation of your vow of obedience. Sister Elizabeth's composure cracked slightly. You don't understand what you're doing, she whispered, her voice suddenly desperate. He will be most displeased. He. Father Ryan questioned. Do you mean Bishop Henny? Sister Elizabeth merely shook her head, eyes darting nervously toward the windows as if expecting someone to appear. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped aside. The locked door, when finally opened under threat of ecclesiastical censure, revealed a shocking scene. 5 nuns, including the missing Sister Rebecca, were confined in what had once been a storage room. The space, perhaps 15 feet square, contained only a chamber pot in the corner and thin pallets on the floor. The single high window had been boarded over, leaving the room in near darkness save for the light now streaming through the open door. The women were pale, malnourished, and showed signs of physical abuse. Their habits were torn and soiled, their faces gaunt with hunger and fear. One, later identified as Sister Josephine Brady, was heavily pregnant, her swollen belly incongruous against her thin limbs. The stench of unwashed bodies and human waste was overwhelming. Father Ryan turned aside momentarily, fighting nausea, while Monsignor Kelly crossed himself in horror. In the name of all that's holy, the Monsignor whispered. What has happened here? Sister Rebecca, once robust and quick to smile,